Today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable, just jaw-dropping moments of the entire Second World War. It's a story about a moment when an entire navy faced an impossible choice, and what they did next, well, it sent shockwaves around the world.
I mean, just think about that for a second. It sounds completely insane, right? Why would these sailors, men whose entire lives revolved around their ships, decide to purposefully send them to the bottom of the ocean? That's the huge question we're going to tackle today.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The place is Toulon, a major naval base in France. The date is November 27th, 1942. And what you're looking at here, this isn't the aftermath of some epic naval battle. No, this is self-destruction on an unimaginable scale. And to really get how it came to this, to all this fire and twisted metal, we have to go back a little bit.
So by late 1942, the French fleet wasn't just a collection of warships, it was a political powder keg, just sitting there in the middle of a global war. And trust me, everyone was watching it.
You see, after France surrendered to Germany back in 1940, the country was split in two. The Germans occupied the north, but the south was this so-called free zone, run by a new French government based in the city of Vichy. Now, they claimed to be neutral, but let's be real, they were basically a puppet state, trying desperately to navigate their relationship with the Axis. And the single most valuable thing they had left was their navy.
And this is where it gets really tense. You had two massive opposing forces. On one side, the Allies, especially Great Britain, were absolutely terrified that this powerful, super-modern fleet would get seized by Hitler and turned against them. For the British, this was an existential threat. But on the other side, the Vichy French had a promise, an armistice agreement that said the fleet would stay French. It was their last real symbol of sovereignty, their only big bargaining chip.
Now, a delicate situation like that, it was never going to last. And in November of 1942, something happened thousands of miles away that would finally light the fuse on that powder keg in Toulon. And look how fast everything happens. It's just a crazy chain reaction. It all kicks off on November 8th when the Allies invade North Africa in Operation Torch. The top French admiral in the region, a guy named Darlan, switches sides and joins the Allies. Well, this sends Hitler through the roof. He feels completely betrayed. He doesn't trust the Vichy French an inch anymore. So just 3 days later, he orders his armies to roll in and take over the rest of France. And then on the 19th, he makes the secret call. Grab the fleet. The plan was in motion. German Panzers were now barreling towards the coast. And back in Toulon, the French sailors knew their worst nightmare was about to become a reality. So here's the German plan, codenamed Operation Lila. It was supposed to be a textbook military operation. You've got the elite 7th Panzer Division coming in from two directions, a classic pincer attack. The goal was to just smash through the defenses, grab the harbor, and capture all those beautiful ships before anyone could even blink. They even had ships waiting out at sea to stop any escapees. It was meant to be quick, clean, and decisive. And in the dead of night, at 4 a.m., it starts. German tanks roll into Toulon. It's a total surprise, and the first line of defense just collapses. At this point, it really looks like it's all over for the fleet. But then, this is where the story gets so clever. The French sailors and officers on the ground start this quiet, brilliant campaign of stalling. The main German assault column somehow gets lost inside the huge, confusing naval base. That costs them a full hour. When German officers get to the main gates, French sentries start arguing about paperwork. Officers start making small talk, negotiating anything they can think of to just burn a few more precious minutes. They weren't fighting with guns, they were fighting with red tape and quick wits.
Every single second they bought was priceless, because it gave the French admirals just enough time to give the most heartbreaking order of their entire careers.
At 5:25 in the morning, right as German tanks are finally crashing through the gates, the flagship Strasbourg sends out the message. Over every radio, on every signal lamp, just one word, repeated 3 times: scuttle. The order to sink their own ships, the nightmare scenario they had prepared for, was now happening. And suddenly, the whole harbor just explodes into chaos. Crews who had secretly drilled for this exact moment fly into action. They're opening the sea valves to flood the ships from below. They're setting demolition charges on the engines, the guns, anything important. The explosions on the cruiser Agilier were so massive that the ship literally burned for 20 straight days.
And this one quote just says it all. You can just imagine the scene. German soldiers finally storm the flagship, the Strasbourg, and an officer finds the French commander, Admiral de Laborde, and demands he surrender the ship. And the admiral just looks at him and says, matter-of-factly,
The ship is already sunk. It was sinking right under their feet as they spoke.
Think about it. These were elite German soldiers, the same guys who had conquered most of Europe. And now they were just spectators. All they could do was stand there on the docks, completely helpless, and watch as their grand prize, this incredible fleet, literally burned and sank right in front of them.
And the situation was just pure, surreal chaos. Get this, at one point, German soldiers managed to board a submarine, the Henri Poincaré, at the exact same moment the French crew started flooding it. So you had French and German sailors literally bumping into each other, scrambling to get off the sub before it went under. Just incredible.
So, after all the smoke cleared, after the fires finally went out, what was the final result of this unbelievable act of self-destruction?
77. Just let that number sink in. That's how many French warships were sent to the bottom of Toulon harbor by their own crews. We're talking battleships, cruisers, destroyers, an entire navy gone in a single morning.
So let's break down the scorecard here. From the French sailors' point of view, it was a success. Their mission was to keep the ships away from the Germans, and they did it. For Germany, Operation Lila was an absolute total failure. For the Allies, though, this was a huge strategic win. A massive threat was just wiped off the board for good. And for Mussolini's Italy, which had been dreaming of getting its hands on these ships, a major loss.
And the long-term impact was massive. The Vichy government in France lost its last shred of legitimacy. A few submarines actually ignored the scuttle order and managed to escape, later joining the Allies. The environmental damage was staggering. The harbor was so polluted with oil it was basically unusable for 2 years. And for France, its navy was gone. It would take them decades to truly rebuild.
And this is what was left behind. Even 2 years later, the ghosts of that fleet were still there, just littering the harbor. A steel graveyard rusting away in the water. A permanent, chilling monument to what happened that morning.
Which brings us right back to that first question. So, was it a tragedy? Of course, an absolute tragedy. The loss of these amazing ships, the end of a proud naval tradition, it was a disaster for France. But was it also maybe the ultimate act of defiance? By choosing to destroy their own fleet rather than let it be captured, these sailors sent one last incredibly powerful message. They made sure their ships would never ever be used against their allies. It's a debate that still goes on, but one thing is for sure. The day the French Navy killed itself at Toulon is one of the most unforgettable stories in all of military history.